Hey folks, welcome to another edition of Splitting the Atom. If this is your first time visiting us here at Splitting the Atom, what do we do? What the hell is this show? This show is pretty cool. The world serves up, right? The usual of the usual platter, the interesting, the unexpected, and the insane. We tackle it all right here on Splitting the Atom because this isn't a show about nothing. It's a show about everything. And, we're going to get this show out a little earlier than we normally would because I was thinking about this and I was talking to a couple of my friends in the media and I said, you know what, let's get on Pat Ford from Coalition Radio because we all agreed. I don't know much about this radio, this website, this radio station, this or if it's this news web. I really don't. What I know is Pat Ford's been out front every time you see presser with the governor about the Brown University, the horrible Brown University situation, whether it's the governor or the AG or it's the mayor, Smiley. Here we are. We got Coalition Radio out there. So we welcome in Pat Ford. I believe you're the founder. Is that correct?
Yes, I am. It was my, co-founder, myself, a guy named Tony Jones, who's very active in the media scene here in Rhode Island. And we go back to about 2012. So we've been around for a while in a couple of different formats.
Why do you think it is, Pat, that so many people are coming to know who you are now? And I think it's important to note also that your organization is getting right up front with the bigwigs. Not everybody has access to ask the questions that you're asking. And I think that's really impressive. So tell us a little bit about Coalition Radio, really, how, why you wanted to do this and why you're really in many ways at the forefront of local coverage. I consider the grunt stuff real journalism. You guys are at the forefront of this. And how did that come to be?
Well, we were founded in 2012, first as a radio presentation on a local internet radio station only. And then we made the move to AM radio for a while. We did some pay to play. What folks mean by that is we buy airtime, but the nice part is we control the airtime. And so as long as we don't lie or cuss on FCC stations, we can do whatever we want. And what I love about what I do is that every morning I get up and I'm the assignment editor. And there's some wonderful local reporters in this town who are going to be great somewhere else because they'll have the kind of freedom that I have because I own my own show. And the assignment editors are really the air traffic controllers of media. They're the ones taking direction from a news director or a station manager about what's going to be covered. And I don't have to deal with that. I get and do whatever I want. If halfway through a press conference I come up with a question, I just ask it. So it's 2012. We did a lot of, I'm a political animal. I'm not a crime reporter by any stretch. I don't pretend to be. But politics are my forte. And so we came really to prominence during the COVID era because one day, even though I've been doing podcasts and streams and some little bit of AM, I just decided to show up at the Gina, as we love to say in Rhode Island, Gina Raimondo press conference. A lot of things happened that day. I asked my first question in a press conference, and I also began to feel the wrath of what we call the conventional or legacy media. Dan York is on WPRO, and he's been there for generations. I'm a longtime listener and fan of WPRO. Dan York, when I asked a question, he actually lost his mind on the radio, I'm told. I started getting texts because what would I be doing there? How dare I deign to show up at the Temple of Journalism and think that it was okay for me to have a seat? And of course, doing a lot of radio, I've learned to say things like balderdash, or instead of the obvious word. And what's happened in the last few years is that, first of all, the folks in the independent media in Rhode Island work really hard. I'm out there 6 or 7 days a week. So during COVID, I started asking common sense questions. I think I try to ask questions that people want to know the answers to. And that's very different from the sort of pontificating that goes on, particularly on AM radio in this town, and the type of lecturing that takes place from the media. So I challenged Dr. Scott routinely. There's a clip out there that's famous in certain worlds, in the anti-masking and the anti-forced vaccination world, where I asked, I'm kind of long-winded, I asked Dr. Scott a question about masking, and I cite a study, and it's something I'd worked on, and along with a couple of great folks who, quite frankly, I turn to for advice. And there's this moment, and it's funny because the media will often run the answer to my question, not my questions, because my voice, I'm told, is people recognize my voice. And her question, with gritted teeth and a look that was baleful and hateful at the same time, said the immortal masks work. And and again, like this situation, it defied all common sense. It defied medical research. But again, there's a narrative that's expressed by the Rhode Island government. And I will say that conventional media gets a lot of funding from Rhode Island government, not direct funding per se, but advertisements and campaign ads and things like
Oh, of
that.
course.
Right. So,
Oh,
we're talking about
they make constant pit stops at all the local radio stations.
right.
You know,
And the quid pro quo is that these guys get enormous amounts of money. So, you all been in the media for a bit. You know that the calculus has changed in terms of financing these big TV stations, radio stations. They don't have any money. And certainly Cumulus is a perfect example of that. I think they've been delisted or almost delisted 100 times. I'm being facetious, of course. But they're not going to challenge the status quo. They're just not. They can't afford to anymore. Maybe
that's
20
right.
years ago. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when Geraldo Rivera was a reforming left-wing ideologue who changed the entire mental health system of New York State because of what he found at a facility on Staten Island. So I've seen the evolution. I grew up when Robert Redford was, in movies like The Candidate, but all the President's Men and all sorts of different movies. And of course, the scandal movies. I come from a different era. I come from an era where Sam Donaldson would literally just about get caught under the helicopter blades chasing down Ronald Reagan with question after question after question.
Well,
so,
yeah, and I think, and I hate to interrupt for a sec, but I think that's important, Pat, because I think a lot of people, and particularly this generation, doesn't understand what real good journalism is. It's not asking questions that satiate, the people behind the mics answering the questions, their egos or their narrative. Real journalism is getting into the pit and trying to wade through the crap and the lies and find your way out of that with not a truth, but the truth. And that's why I wanted to call you today and have you come on. And thanks so much. And I want to talk about what you do before we let you go today, as in terms of your giving back to the community, because I think that's really important. But I want to talk about, and so I guess that hopefully that helps people understand who is Coalition Radio. Old school guys and people, who believe in old school journalism, the Woodward and Bernsteins getting it done. And so let's talk about the Brown tragedy. Just today, Pat, you have even the president saying, wait a minute, why are there so few cameras around the facility?
Right.
But I want to, the questions that I have for you is, first of all, it's a biggie because a lot of people are wondering, was Ella targeted? Because a lot of people don't know that, they should, hopefully by now, but she was a conservative. She was in a conservative study group. And like I said to a good friend of mine in the media, obviously this person, I believe, she was being cased. Somebody was watching her prior to the shooting. And whoever knew that there weren't a lot of cameras in this facility knew that there weren't a lot of cameras. So they either were a student or a worker at this facility. I'm hearing that there's more than one person involved in this, that on Benevolent Street, they're putting Ring camera footage together and so on and so forth. But let's start there. Was Ella targeted with what you know? And why wouldn't they say that if they, meaning Nerona, the governor, Mayor Smiley, why wouldn't they tell us that from the jump?
Well, first of all, to answer the big question, I'm not sure. My gut instinct, and I go on what I call spidey sense. There are no such things as coincidences. The random nature of most of these assassinations is not random. By and large, you've got two styles of these mass killings. And as someone who's the father of two daughters who both went away to college. A daughter that actually did her overseas junior year in Jordan. I just, your heart breaks for for both of these kids, because both of them had such enormous potential, and on top of it, they're someone's baby. So when I look at this, I say my spidey sense says I can't believe it was an accident. Now here's the problem: the information, the paucity of information is real. I don't have anything to really judge that on, except for the fact it's surreal that someone would pick that classroom at that time, that moment, and assassinate this wonderful young person in that manner. And here's part of the problem: by withholding all information, number one, folks on the internet who are just sort of winging it, and there's people out there that do that, are given free rein, or as I like to say, license to ill. But what government in Rhode Island, and I think everywhere, but particularly in Rhode Island, fails to understand that in the absence of information, and it's a complex investigation, I understand that they've got to build a case, but in the absence of information, usually the conspiracy theories that can emerge are far more dramatic than anything that they could present to us. To me, the bad guy in all of this, at every level, is Brown University. And Brown University, Ms. Paxton, the president, is getting a lot of heat because folks are calling her all sorts of names. She's stupid. She's not on top of the situation. Christina Paxton is a brilliant woman who has emerged at the top of the corporate/educational food chain in ways that few people do. I believe that Brown University, first of all, the reputational issue at Brown, if given what appears to have happened is disclosed, will be incredibly destructive. The second issue, of course, is that I don't think that individuals connected with Brown University, the federal government, state and local law enforcement really want us to understand the level of mass surveillance that takes place. Because on its face, it's ludicrous. And I keep asking the questions that there's no films associated with this. It's frankly impossible. Yesterday, I cited some litigation that the Attorney General's office prosecuted, where in the decision they stipulated a Brown University detective stating that they're, in his words, his sworn words, there were thousands of cameras in and around Brown, and this is the important part, and adjacent campuses, not just Brown University. So whether it be Stinger technology, which is aimed at cell phones, whether it be cameras with enhanced AI, folks need to understand that Brown University, we all think locally of Brown University as those crazy college kids, liberal arts types who are partying their way through an Ivy League school. That's kind of true on the undergraduate level. On the graduate level, Brown University is one of the top universities on the planet when it comes to computer science, artificial intelligence, neural networks, you name it. So even on its face value, the notion that there wasn't an incredible level of mass surveillance is ludicrous. And again, I'm trying to keep it clean for your family listeners. Brown University is going to be faced with enormous lawsuits, enormous. And Ms. Paxton, a brilliant woman who works at the highest level, like I said, of industry and education, her actual responsibility legally as the president of Brown University. Remember, it's not Brown University, it's the Brown University Corporation, right? And there's a big difference. What is it? People are claiming an $8 billion endowment. That's all at stake right now. So her job is to protect Brown. And
right. And so that's what, Pat, that's what I wanted to say. I mean, she might be brilliant. She might be at the top of the food chain. But if she can't do the job that was asked of her, and then when she's asked by whomever, to include yourself, and she says, I don't know. I don't know.
I will argue that
I don't know. That's unacceptable.
But I will argue, and this might make me an outlier, that she's playing a role. And that role is to diminish everything. Listen, so many people in the media. You know how many of them play a role, whether it be on TV or particularly the radio, kind of like Worldwide Wrestling, right? WWE. I, I believe she is cynically playing a role right now,
For
which is
whom? For whom, Pat?
to protect Brown University.
So
Her
it's
smart
solely for
dude.
Brown. It's not for the FBI. It's not for Smiley. It's not for
No, no,
Nerona.
no.
It's for
I
the
think that
endowments.
it's the endowment, the school, the reputation. Listen,
Wow.
when this comes down, if there are so many wild ass theories out there about the cameras were. I've got a credible journalist that I know who he believes in his heart that a number of those cameras were turned off because of the threat of ICE in that neighborhood and the high level researchers who may or may not be here legally, their paperwork, any one of those things. That's a rumor. That legitimate people are quietly talking about. Yeah. And again, isolating the public from all elements of the investigation encourages that. But her first responsibility as a president of Brown University Corporation is to protect the school. And that's what they're trying to do. My sense is that at a certain level, Brown and the Providence Police are at loggerheads. Then add in the dynamic of the FBI and the ATF being there. Holy cow. Now you've got literally a direct arm of President Trump, who, remember, they've been at war with for literally the almost inauguration day.
Well, and here's why I'm not necessarily opposed to that. The only information, so Reuters said this yesterday. They surmised Nerona's comments after he was asked, what the hell's going on? You guys can't figure this out. You can't pinpoint it. Nerona's comments thusly, officials said there were limited cameras inside the engineering and physics building where the shooting took place and that none had recorded any clear footage of the gunman. Okay, so here's what I struggle with. The very first photo that was released was of a white guy who served in the army. And what were they saying during the Biden administration that was the biggest threat to the United States during his tenure? Was
Absolutely.
that domestic terrorism by military personnel were the biggest threat to the United States. So they had no problem coming up with this photo, lickety split, and putting it out there. And we knew everything about this white guy who served in the army. They go and get him. Oddly enough, CNN reporter 3 doors down at this crap hole in Coventry, okay? He's there. They were willing to put that out. And I think that bad taste in people's mouths, Pat, that information being out there like that so quick. And now all of a sudden we don't have anything because there weren't cameras is really not, it's not a bad look. I mean, that's a kind way to say it. It's complete and utter bullshit. And everybody knows it. Everybody knows it.
And how many assassinations, and I'm going to call this an assassination for the current conversation, have we had an almost instant sacrificial lamb in the eyes of the media thrown up there? Listen, just the lawsuit from that gentleman, it's, and they'll probably settle it with our dollars, of course, as far as, the state goes. Brown University, who knows? So just raise tuition another $5,000. But it's impossible. One of the comments that I believe it was the Attorney General made was, and I'm paraphrasing here, it's almost impossible to hide in the United States now. You got to go full Ted Kaczynski, all right, and then hope they don't scan your invoice for hand warmers at the local Home Depot. It's that connected. So the complete absence of information is simply not credible.
What about the scrubbing of the internet? Can we talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, of course. You've got an individual being named who's a student there, who was a student there, is a student, and this goes back to old Soviet workers' paradise. Remember when you became an unperson in Soviet Union?
Yes.
That, from my perspective, that's what Brown is trying to do. They're trying to make this person unperson.
Why?
Reputational protection. Just on that level. And if that person does turn out to be someone who's a left-wing protests are active in any one of a number of organizations.
Pro-Palestine, LGBTQ. This is what I've heard. I don't know if that's true, but why else would you be scrubbing that person's internet profile?
Which she denied last night
Yes.
at the press conference. And again, I keep going back to this. This is not a stupid individual at all. This is a person who's playing the percentages and operating under the guiding principle of must save Brown. Because, parents are looking at this around the planet. And you're going to see, and it's going to get worse every day, a significant percentage of the parents. I mean, I said to my, one of my kids went to college in Providence. One of my kids went to college in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. These are all things we look at and internalize before we make a life-changing decision to, air quotes, invest in an Ivy League education.
Pat, so, what do you know? What do you know about this? I was told that Ella, who was the leader of a conservative student group, right, had previously gotten threats. Their group had gotten threats. What do you know about that?
That I don't know. I haven't seen that. I've heard that. And
yes,
she was, my understanding, the vice chair of the Young Republicans of Brown University, which, talk about putting yourself in the center of a storm. Years ago, I know someone who started, and this is just anecdotal, but a free speech organization at the Rhode Island School of Design. Now, not Republican, nowhere within 1,000 yards was the name Trump, a free speech organization, and got crucified at RISD for supporting free speech. So when I tell you that the atmosphere, and I spend a lot of time around Brown. I had never met this young woman, but at the same time, I mean, a year or so ago, there was an encampment on what they call the Green, and it was towards the end of the school year, and it effectively shut down part of Brown University. And I remember leaving the protest. I had interviewed a couple of people there, and I'm walking out and I see these two sad sacks students sitting at a table with what appeared from a distance to be political literature. So I thought, okay, man, this is the Young Republicans. I walked up, it was the Democratic Party, the Young Democrats of Brown University, who had been abandoned. I can't tell you just how left of center Brown has become. I covered during the presidential election Gloria de la Cruz, as I remember her name properly, who is the presidential candidate for the Party of Social Liberation. She had a speech in Providence that was a real barn burner, ironically targeting Biden and then Kamala more so than Donald Trump. But fascinating speech. By the way, this was at 9 o'clock on a Friday night. Yes, I was the only journalist there. I have the video.
That a boy.
Yeah, well, and I had a great conversation with the candidate who had met at an event in New York, and we took turns bashing Kamala Harris because I'm a libertarian. You can imagine how I feel about Kamala Harris. So, and by the way, it's not the normal reflexive stuff. Here's a woman who had, as Attorney General of the state of California, held back exculpatory evidence on, ironically, people of color for alleged drug crimes. Yeah, so, I loathe the woman. Everything I stand against. So the political movement at Brown University has shifted aggressively away from the, quote unquote, mainstream Democratic Party to PSL, the Working Families Party, Democratic Socialists, those organizations, which are very viable political parties and are challenging the working, the head, the senior aide to the Providence, Rhode Island City Council actually helped lead the uncommitted movement. And Providence had, I think, the number 2 during the Biden, Kamala Harris, whatever convention, the uncommitted movement, those who sought to fight the war between Israel and the Gaza, actually, it was the second highest uncommitted vote count, I believe, in the country. So you've got this radical shift of politics at Brown University, which is earth-shattering. In huge huge breaks in the Democratic Party in the state of Rhode Island. You've got members in the state legislature who are active DSA and working family parties. No PSLs yet, but aggressively left of center. So amidst that backdrop, nothing shocks me. I want to be careful though, because ironically, some of the very folks who would, cast, or I should say, make sport of people like myself in the independent media are out there with these wild ass rumors. And yet I'm preaching, take a deep breath. Let's channel our energies to beating up on the Attorney General's office and the Rhode Island state government for this. By the way, if you've noticed, you know who has not said, I would think just maybe 2 or 3 words in the entire 5 or 6 press conferences? That would be the head of the Rhode Island State Police.
It's so funny you mentioned that, Pat, because I was doing my dishes this morning and I thought, where the hell's the state police in all this? I mean,
Right.
I don't trust anybody. I don't trust Dan McKee, that guy. I don't trust Nerona. I don't trust Smiley. I don't trust any of them. It's just one fat lie and narrative. And let legacy media go pimp a narrative. We all know it's crap, but fine, whatever. But I thought, where's the state police? I love those guys. I value them. I try to honor them. Well, when I get stopped, I don't give them any problems. And I thank you, sir. Adios. Time to go. But yeah, it's very strange. Why do you say wild ass rumors? I mean, do you trust? I mean, do you trust what they're telling you? Do you trust the president when she says, I don't know?
It's just, but I want to bring up a point about the Rhode Island State Police. Now we've all watched SVU a thousand times, right? We've all watched the Law and Order series of shows, and to keep it simple, think about how the entire structure of that show is. Everybody's seen a Law and Order or SVU episode, and they actually say in the intro, the police find the person at the side of the road dead, and the police do the investigation, and the detectives do the investigation, and then the case is turned over to, well, in our case, we don't have district attorneys. We have an attorney general because our state is so small. So our attorney general serves the role of a district attorney on these level of cases, felony cases. What's become clear is that Peter Nerona's office is actively involved in the investigation. Criminal lawyers that I've spoken to, and I'm going to be pursuing this line of questioning with other criminal lawyers, say that never happens. You've got state police and local police departments, particularly sizable ones like Cranston and Providence and Pawtucket, who typically present the investigation. In this case, we got Peter Nerona. I can't convict Daniel Dolan on anything, running the investigation. I don't know what that means. And it's something I'm pursuing. But and the reason I'm providing some disclaimers, I think people know me well enough to know I'm not afraid of asking anybody anything, anywhere, anytime. Bring it on. But ultimately, that's the kind of thought process I'm going to. Why I understand the notoriety of this case and the drama and most importantly, the tragedy of this case would lend itself to none other than the best of the best. All right, investigating this. And hopefully that's what we're getting with ATF and Federal Bureau of Investigation. Peter Nerona's, I'll just say this. Have you ever heard of a guy named Daniel Dolan?
Yes.
All right, Pawtucket police officer, shot a kid, stipulated that he shot the kid. No one disagreed that he shot a young man because of a road rage incident. While he was driving an unregistered vehicle, by the way, the registration on that had lapsed. He took the plate off of another vehicle and put it onto his truck. This is a police officer. With open containers outside of his jurisdiction. And he was found not guilty of everything.
Yeah.
Now, wait a minute, that's not enough, because Rhode Island's like a game show. Everybody goes home a loser, and there's always parting gifts. Months later, Mr. Dolan was pulled over, intoxicated. And when he was brought, we have videos of this, when he was brought to police headquarters in Coventry, threatened the lives on video of police officers. Now that's a felony. After a couple of years of this going on, last week, Mr. Dolan pleaded to a what they call a NOLO on a misdemeanor and was not found guilty of a crime that they had on effing videotape. That's
Pat,
Peter Nerona.
right, right. Okay. So, and here's the thing, people might tune into my show and they might say, oh, you're just a crazy tinfoil hat wearing person or so on and so forth. I really don't think so. And I think that when if you say the things that I tend to say, which is, I look out at the landscape and I look at the way that the Biden administration covered stories. I looked at the massacre,
Yep.
the Christmas massacre mowdown of, the black guy that killed all the white people. That story disappeared. The Eliza Flesher murder and rape, that story disappeared.
Yep.
The guy that was just killed out in California by three young black men. He was a World Trade Center survivor. That was buried. George Floyd, who was high, and yes, the knee to his neck didn't help, but there were dual things going on there. And the real truth of that story, in my estimation, was buried so that they could create a narrative. So what I'm saying is, there's a real effort in this country to confuse, to bury, to dissuade people from thinking a certain way, the chaos that they try to create, the constant race baiting, the attack against Christianity. I mean, people see this and they think that we don't. And so if being, anti Nerona or anti Mayor Smiley or anti Governor McKee seems tinfoil hat to so many, do a little research. How about this? Not even research. Pay attention. Pay attention to what you're looking at, because 9 times out of 10, it's manipulated for political clout, leverage, gain, power, whatever. I mean, it is a filthy, filthy game that's being played in politics, in our culture, in society in general. And, there's so much mental illness now on top of all of that going on. And the anti-Semitism is mind-numbing. I mean, it is unbelievable to think that people openly applaud the beating up of Jews, the complete annihilation again of the Jewish community. I don't care if you support Netanyahu or not. It's not okay to just walk up to Jewish kids on a train like two black guys did in the last 48 hours and push them around and chase them and smack them and threaten to murder. This is where we're at in 2025, Pat. So
Well,
I just say, hey, man, keep going, keep working hard, get the story, ask the questions. I admire you, and it takes a lot of guts to do to stand before people today and say, wait a minute, not so fast. That takes a lot of guts, Pat.
it's we don't have a choice. We really don't. I have very nuanced opinions about a lot of people in this current mess. Vincent A. Buddy Ciancio, we call a situation like this a real frittata. And I love using that term because it injects a tiny bit of humor. I'll run down some people. And part of it's nuanced because I have working relationships with some of these people. I truly believe that Brett Smiley has, on the city of Providence, uh, created a level of financial stability and operational stability that hasn't existed really in the time that I've lived here. I believe Brett Smiley, because I've asked him hundreds of questions, he's never ever lied to me. I think he's doing, under horrific circumstances, the best he can. I think McKee is just, I don't know what to say. He's been asked one question in the last 2 or 3 press conferences. He had to ask for it to be repeated. Like, come on, dude, be on your A game. But this is a guy who, if he had a fastball, he's lost it. He's been an atrocious governor, so I'm not shocked that he'd be a complete failure. The police chief, I've known him for quite a bit. I've found him to be thoroughly honest and transparent. And remember, I'm no A-lister. I've worked really hard to hit the B minus list in Providence. Now, people aren't worried about Channel 10. They look at Channel 10 and 12 and the sheer volume, and there's I've kind of scrapped and clawed my way into people's heads who are governmental. But I have found a police chief. I don't know if you could prepare yourself for the type of press scrutiny and world scrutiny and internet scrutiny that they're getting. And, as far as the Providence Police Department, I truly believe that culpability, responsibility lies in trying to deal with Brown University. I see them as a big brother-esque figure. I see them as willing to do virtually anything to maintain their power and their position in the city. Look at some of the big cities around New England that have Ivy League. I mean, look what Harvard pulls, not just in Cambridge, but in the cities that they're growing in. Look at the amount of property that Brown University owns, and like I said, in all these cases, these multi-billion-dollar endowments. I see them as placing, all sorts of restriction. I see them as being completely opaque. Opaque isn't even strong enough for it.
Yeah, but Pat, with the FBI getting involved, how do you, okay, so let's say they're concerned about endowments and power and narrative and all that, but here comes the FBI and ATF or whomever. I mean,
Right.
They're not going to go along with, I would assume, okay, so you don't want to say that it's this individual from the LGBT community is being scrubbed on your website or wherever and, is a sympathizer to Palestine, but we're going to say it.
Well, and this is where I put my own personal tinfoil hat on, because I do believe the deep state exists. I am a libertarian. I've gotten smattering glances of it from time to time in a relatively sheltered life, but I do believe the deep state exists. And I believe that organizations like Caltech, MIT, Brown, Harvard are all components of it. And they've all got their own agenda. Now, I'm not doubting the ability of the FBI, but right now it seems like an eternity, but only a few days have gone by. I ultimately believe, my spidey sense tells me that the FBI is going to play a much larger role in this if this individual isn't found, or it isn't a clean case underlying whatever individual they do find. So I do believe there's a huge role moving forward in the very near future in the feds.
I hope so. I hope so, Pat. Now you're going to go to a presser later today. What do you expect to hear? Are they going to talk about? Are they going to talk about this girl being a conservative, maybe being targeted? Are they going to talk about how there were two suspects because of ring camera put together? Like, what do you expect to hear today?
I don't know, because ultimately, just reflect on one simple fact: 9 people were wounded.
Yes.
A couple of them were egregiously wounded. We don't even know we've had no contact with any of their claims or any of their testimony. And, if you got shot in this incident, you got a pretty good bird's eye view of what happened. We've had no testimony. I would assume we walk out of this, unless there's an actual discovery of someone real or imagined, I think we walk out of this with the same level of as little information as possible.
And how do we not know what that person yelled? I heard something, but I wasn't sure what it was. I mean, unless the person has marbles in their mouth, they're either yelling, Allah Akbar, I'm killing all of you, I hate conservatives, free Palestine. I mean, how do we not know what that statement was? Nobody heard it?
They're just, they have put a clamp down. And remember, I can't speak to this because so much of this is hidden. Is Brown University exerting any pressure on these witnesses / wounded? The amount of pressure in these relationships is real. And I don't know. And that's why I couch this very carefully, because these are the type of wild ass theories that come up in my mind. I think I'm a pretty common sensible guy in my mind in the absence of all information. Listen, I preach to politicians. I have one-on-one conversations with a lot of people all the time. I'm out there 6 or 7 days a week, attending events that most people have never even heard of. And I always preach to them, just in situations like this, nothing this dramatic, but in situations like this, you have to disclose to people at a certain point. the real
Yes.
or imagined is far worse than the truth. Uh, and so I don't see any signs of them releasing. What's interesting about this, I usually there's a half a dozen star reporters, maybe three or four at this point, because most of the a lot of the big names have been cut from 10, 12. 6 literally doesn't exist anymore. PRO does not have a newsman. Bill, he retired. So most
Wait
of
a
these
minute. Bill
organizations,
Haberman retired?
yeah,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah,
Oh,
very quietly. He's actually does some stuff for Latino Public Radio occasionally. Outstanding human being,
yeah, he's a nice guy. He is.
and his voice is the stuff of radio legends, right?
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. You know what? Speaking of nice guys and nice people, I want to end this today, and I just want to say again, thank you so much for your. And I hate to do that, but I don't want to go past anybody's capability to pay attention. So I
no, I
looked and
understand.
I thought, people today, it's 15-minute shots on their reels, and they're good. They're
Oh,
done.
listen, what
You are invaluable to what's going on, and I hope we get to talk again. But you also do some great work, and in addition to covering the news for us and try to do the best you can in the most honest fashion, you do a lot of groundwork that people really don't know about, and you really help the community. Let's talk about that for a minute.
I do something called libertarian mutual aid. Now, I'm a libertarian. I'm for the record, I'm on the national board of directors of the Libertarian Party. I'm actually on the executive committee. I want to end government. No bones about it. Republican conservatives have got nothing on me. But at the same time, and this became front and center during the SNAP crisis just a month or so ago. The government has made promises they are clearly incapable of keeping. And they've taken over the responsibility for feeding poor people, and they do a terrible job at it, and they can't manage it. And as a libertarian, I want to end the welfare state, the welfare industrial complex. I want to end it, but we've got too many broken people who have been we have this incredible reliance on it. Well, again, we saw that with SNAP. So for about 3 years now, I run something called Libertarian Mutual Aid. We do some storm relief. We did a lot, not a lot. We did a fair amount during those North Carolina, Florida, and Tennessee storms. But our biggest project is something called the Water Project. I was at a homeless encampment. Talk about life-changing moments. Very briefly, I was at a homeless encampment about 3 years ago for a press conference. Eric Hirsch and those folks, there's about to be an encampment closed on Admiral Street, right across from Home Depot. And it was one of these terrible, terrible summer days, 90 plus degrees, 130% humidity. And a young man comes up to me, and all he's got on are jeans, no shoes, no socks, no shirt, gaunt. I would believe that he was probably self-medicating. I believe he was in addiction. And he asked me the immortal question, changed my life. He goes, "Do you have any water in that truck?" I drive this paddle van. And I had recently developed a donor who gave me water by the pallet. And I had a couple of friends who run outreach centers. I just donate to them. And I opened the back of the truck, and his eyes went wide because I had a pallet and a half of bottled water. And we passed it out to the 30 or 40 tents that were in this encampment. And I realized at this moment, despite the bazillions of dollars spent on helping the poor, despite all the money that organizations like Crossroads profit off the poor, no one delivers water to encampments. Imagine you live under a tarp and you have no water. And maybe you got $5 to your name, and you're going to use 3 of them to buy one little bottle of water at a bodega. So we started doing, and now we do it 35 plus locations around the Providence North up to primarily the Woonsocket area. We deliver bulk bottled water to homeless encampments, meal kitchens, and food pantries. Importantly, we do it for free. All right. And here's what it comes down to. Number one, if we want to eliminate government waste and mega government, we have to replace it. We need to replace it as much as possible with volunteer action. Number two, I am blessed. I have the best job in the effing life. All right. I get to, for whatever reason, I get to go up to these people face to face and take them on everything. All right. And so I am blessed. If, as a media organization in this town, all you're good for is showing up and doing homeless porn, when these people are getting thrown out of their encampments, or there's some temporary drama, or any of the horrific conditions that we find in winter and summer here, and you don't give back something, go to hell. Just go to hell. I'm tired of these media organizations who show up at restaurants for the first time when they're about to go out of business. I'm exhausted by all these jackasses who have all sorts of opinions about how to do this or that and have never spent meaningful time developing relationships with the poor and working, just doing a little bit of sweat equity just to help people out.
Yeah, media and sweat equity. Are you kidding? Come on. Come on, Pat. Well, listen, I think it's awesome that you do that, and I think it's important. I think it's spiritually important. I think it's important for our communities, and I'm grateful that you care that much, because very few people do these days, Pat.
Well, listen, if someone got $5 or $10, burning a hole in their pocket, all right?
Oh, yeah.
It's just libertarianmutualaid.org. Because we're libertarians, we even take crypto. But just, find an organization in this state, and there's a lot of really good ones around the state. People can reach out to me, and I'll tell you where to donate. If you don't want to donate to us, I got all sorts of people who are literally saints walking amongst us. And they're not Crossroads, and they're not these organizations where they're paying $300,000, $400,000 to people. They're just doing the work, and they need help. So whatever folks can muster, just help. Find a way. Folks want an organization to volunteer for, I'll give you some great ones. And you'll learn a lot, and you'll experience a lot of love. You'll meet some great people, and we can start to take back government away from these big moneyed interests who are only there to make a buck, like Crossroads.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I don't disagree with you there. I thank you so much, Pat, for you taking the time for us today. Coalition Radio, here's the thing. You got this big presser. I hope that we get to talk again. I'll be calling on you, my friend. I'll be keeping my eye on you.
Anytime I can help. Listen, my friend Tony Jones likes to talk about scaring the squares. Let's scare the squares. I want Dan McKee to run again, desperately, because I need him to be crushed for his sins against this community. All right? I need all these guys to be taken out publicly and politically throttled for their sins against this community.
Hey, I'm all for that. I love it. Thank you so much, Pat. All right, we'll talk again real soon. All right, gang. Well, that's it for this edition of Splitting the Atom. I want to thank Pat for taking the time. Pat Ford from Coalition Radio. What a great show. I hope that we gave you some information that is helpful today. All right. I want you to do me a favor and subscribe to OceanStateCurrent.com so you don't miss an episode of anything, whether it's Road Rage, Red Tide Radio, or In the Dugout with Mike Stenhouse. We'll see you next time, guys. We're always going to keep it real for you. And I promise you, you are not crazy for asking questions. You are not. You are curious, and you're probably onto something. That's it. Class dismissed.